And did they like now too that their money is more diversified among many deals instead of one deal?
Oh
Did
yeah, yeah. And it's one of the things that I try to highlight when I'm talking to people is the fact that it's really like investing in a mutual fund. Mutual fund invests in stocks and bonds. I just happen to do mortgages and notes. One has volatility, one's a fixed interest rate. Is there the potential to make more in the stock market than in a fixed rate fund? Sure. The problem is, though, is that you have to take on a ton more risk and a ton more volatility.
right.
And one of the things that I learned when comparing the stock market to anything that's more fixed is if you start showing people that every time the market goes down, you have to make a bigger return to make up for the loss because you're playing with less money. And so I just started developing examples and stories to show people what's really going on in the stock market. And it's not about trashing on the stock market, it's just showing its weak points and saying, or you could just do this, which is consistent, it's predictable, it's pretty darn stable. And now we've been lending for 15 years and no one's made less than 9% ever for as long as we've been doing it.
That's amazing. I'm curious as to have you had to foreclose on any property, or what's the percentage of default that you
Sure.
have experienced in your 15 years as a lender?
Yes, the truth is I've actually lost count of the total number of deals. When we got to about 2,000 deals, I started losing track. And so I've never really modified my formula. I always just use 2,000. But essentially, you just take the number of defaults that you've had and you divide it into 2,000 and it tells you the percentage.
Mhm.
I'm still less than 1%
Oh, wow.
after
That's good.
15 years of doing it.
That's
So we've had a
amazing.
we've had a pretty good track record of doing things. We've come up with some pretty creative ways to help fix problems when investors start having problems. And so we've been able to avoid foreclosure probably 95% of the time with the deals. We can just figure out how to work it out and get the thing taken care of, sold, and everybody makes money.
That makes sense. Because I used to do private lending myself, and yeah, I have had to help a borrower out.
Mhm.
Yeah, to get them because they took on more than what they could handle, and
Yeah.
yeah. So no, that's a really good point. So you mentioned that on the low end, your investors are able to make a 9% return.
Mhm.
How are the economic structure? So if the low end is 9%, what is the high end? And yeah.
So the range is really 9 to 10. It's not a huge range, but the more that they put in, the higher the interest rate goes. The majority of the money that we're putting out on the street is going out at 12%. And so 10 is about as high as I can pay consistently at a 12% rate because of those down months, right? I need that 2% spread to cover all the downtime on the money because every time a loan pays off, it's almost impossible to put it back into another deal tomorrow. It just doesn't work that way. And the reality is, or I should say, and the big reason behind that is if something happens with the closing that's paying off
Mhm.
and it gets delayed, if you promise someone that you're closing on a loan tomorrow and you don't have
Yeah.
the capital because you're waiting on the other deal, you end up hurting people. And so
Yep.
you have to take downtime and you have to sit with cash idle at certain times.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then do you have a commitment, like when they invest with you, how long do they have to commit their money for with your fund?
That's one of the things that's actually a little more unique about us than almost everybody else in the industry. And that's the fact that we don't have a lock in period
Uh,
by default. There is a scenario where a lock in period can kick in, but 99.9% of the time right now, no one's touching our lock in period at all. And so the one scenario where a lock in period comes in is if a financial advisor brings us a client instead of us raising the capital on our own. Financial advisors like to receive a commission. So if I have to pay out the commission, then I have to have a lock-in period so that I have enough time with those interest rate spreads to make enough extra money to pay back the commission that we had to write a check on. Otherwise, there's no lock-in period.
that
Now,
makes
I like to ask people to stay for a year to make sure that we have enough time to make it work and show them that it works. because it is real estate. It's a little bit slower moving vehicle. So I ask for a year, but I don't hold anybody to it.
I see. Okay. And what do you have a rough idea how long your average investor stay in your fund for?
Right now, it's about 7.5 years is the
Wow,
average
that's really
person.
good.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of turnover.
Wow, that's amazing. That's excellent. Yeah. And have you started raising money out? So actually, the type of assets that the fund lands on, is it
Mhm.
just single family fix and flip only?
No, and it's also about to change at the end of the year. We tend to do mostly single family because that's what most real estate investors do. So it's really more the market that's driving that.
Mm,
We do smaller projects because most investors, truth be told, they are smaller investors, and so most of the deals are smaller. However, at the end of the month, we're closing on buying another hard money lender that is also fully funded by private capital, and they do commercial deals. So we'll be doing everything from residential all the way through much larger commercial projects with private capital as soon as we get that closed.
gotcha. And I'm gonna assume it's all for businesses. There's none, even on the residential side, it's not for owner occupants properties,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah, I don't do owner occupant anything.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so with this new acquisition, then you start to lend for multifamily and strip centers and self-storage and all of that. Do you have any plan to also do equity side, invest equity either as a preferred equity or even just common equity into syndications at all?
There's a possibility of that. One of the things that people don't talk about in the real estate space, or I should say, they actually talk about it slightly incorrectly. They only tell part of the story, right? Everybody talks about how all the wealthy have all this real estate that they own, and that's a true statement. The thing is, though, the vast majority of wealthy people didn't make their money in real estate. They make it in business, right? And then they take the money that they make in business and they park it in real estate because they need the stability and the tax benefits.
Right.
And so it becomes that nice big shelter for them. One of the things that we're looking at with the new lender that we're buying, they have, it's almost embarrassing to say how much private capital those guys have raised because it's way past where I'm at, but they've raised over $1 billion
Wow.
worth of private capital.
That's amazing.
And yeah, but all of those guys that have all that money, they're business owners, right? These are all people who made money in business. And so one of the things that we're starting to look at is expanding what they're doing with that clientele because their lenders are used to doing things with equity positions. And they're also used to not just lending on real estate, they're also good at lending and investing into business acquisitions. And there's going to be a pretty big expansion of the services that we do not too long after we close. We aren't going to be able to do it immediately the day we close on this thing, but that's going to be one of the first high priorities is to bring on a sales staff, or I should say, grow the sales staff, a couple of people, and then we're going to start marketing for different kinds of projects for those private people. And equity will
Nice.
be a part of it.
That's very cool. Oh, well, yeah. I'm so looking forward to your growth and yeah, and how this journey is gonna be for you. How did you came about acquiring this company? Were you out looking for companies to acquire, or is it someone that you know that's retiring? What was the situation?
Yeah, so I was out looking for businesses to acquire. My financial advisor has been scolding me for a long time that I'm way too top heavy in real estate and that I need to diversify.
Hmm.
And my argument with him for the past 10 years has been, yeah, but where else can I go and get this kind of returns? There's nothing that you offer that gives me this kind of control and this kind of returns. And of course, he can't argue with it. But about 18 months ago to 2 years ago, I just started realizing that, okay, now it's way worse than what he said in where our holdings are now sitting. And it's pretty obscene. And with the interest rates hikes that were coming and the market shifts that we could see coming, I started looking at what else is there that I could invest in that's still equity based, that I can still get a really healthy return, and businesses was it. And so as I started marketing to buy businesses, just like everybody that's on this call, networking is a huge part of it.
Yep.
And so I joined a couple of different groups and different Facebook groups and things where there are people that are actively looking to buy businesses. And I just started networking. And so one of the guys in those groups found this company. But he doesn't have a background in hard money in any way. He doesn't really even have a finance background. He just happened to see the financials and saw how profitable this place was and got really excited about buying a business of this kind of profit level. And so he sought out a partner. And as it turns out, it settled on me. Unfortunately, that started almost a year ago. And it turned out that he and I were not a good fit for each other. And because he found the deal, I stepped out and walked away from it and let it go. And I told him to keep going on his own if he thought he could pull it off. And so you fast forward about 2 or 3 months after I walked away, and the sellers decided that he was the wrong buyer for them. And so they pulled the plug and decided not to sell him. Their second phone call after telling him they weren't going to sell to him was actually to me. And they called and asked me if I'd be interested in buying it because they really liked me. And the fact that I have the experience and all that stuff, they offered me to buy the building or to buy the business. And after some pretty lengthy conversations, because we were going to use bank financing and some other things, bank financing for buying a hard money lending company is actually god awful. It's really bad financing. And so I told the two owners exactly what the deal on the table was. And I said, I don't want to accept it. I really want to buy your business. I don't want to take on this kind of debt. I think it would cause the business to fail. They agreed. And I said, so I'm just going to raise private capital and fund the whole thing 100% with real people. And there's still room in this deal for other people to come in. But what was really crazy is when you start talking about the power of your network, as the deal was coming back together, I made one single Facebook post. And I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but it was something along the lines of, to my private lender friends, who would rather own the lending company and get paid for every loan or keep just lending one at a time? And I left it vague. And 186 people replied to that
Wow.
thing and said, what are you talking about? And then I said, I'm looking at a company and I'd like to bring on some financial partners to own it with me. And obviously, as an owner, you make a cut off of every loan that's processed, not just the ones that you have. About half of the 186 people became interested in the deal and said, yes, I would absolutely love to see all the
Wow.
finances and stuff. And right now, the pitch deck is coming out and all the PPM and stuff is now was done a little bit ago, but the pitch deck is just coming out this week. And so now we're pushing to close. And the crazy thing is, I really only need about 2.5 million. I'm going to try to raise 3 because I'd like to have a little bit of working capital in the business to really be able to explode this thing. But we can buy that $1 billion worth of loans that they're writing for 3 million bucks.
That's
So
cheap. That's
oh
good.
yeah, it's very cheap. They're giving it away is what they're doing, and they know it. That we've talked about, they're giving the business away. They just want the right person to come in and continue on their legacy
Mm,
because they're getting bored. They're both very wealthy now because of the business, and they found out during COVID that they really like golf and they really like going fishing. And so they've decided they want to retire and they don't have the energy to invest in it. So they're like, I just want to sell it to the right person and let them keep going. We just want to leave some skin in the game and let the next person grow too.
that's
So
amazing. I love
yeah, so
that.
they're just giving it away.